Hello everyone and welcome back. I'm Nick. This is MSFS Flight Plans and we are about to embark on our journey along the entirety of historic Route 66 across the western half of the United States. We're starting here in the windy city of Chicago, if you couldn't tell by the skyline, and we are going to take the CowanSim 222B for starters, which is great. Finally an excuse to get back into helicopters, and let's go ahead and hop in because this is super loud. And I don't want it to yell in the microphone so much. We're going to try flying this with say intentions because Pilot Edge does not cover this area out here, and this will not be what the kind of lifelike calls we would actually be getting from them, because we're going to be flying through some airspace they probably would not let us fly through, at least not the way we're going to fly through it. So we'll get to all that in just a minute, and look who we have with us, Chet's wife. I don't know if we've seen her since Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but it sure is nice to have that scowling face back in here. Welcome back, Karen. That's her name, by the way. Okay, so let's take a look at what we're going to be doing before we get into the radio communications and all of the airspace and all that. So we're starting from the top of this building called the Ann and Robert H. Laurie Children's Hospital, which is already at about 1,000 feet. You can tell it's pretty windy here. Once we get up to our cruising altitude, which initially is going to be around 1,800, 2,000 feet, it's going to get up to like 20 knots, so it's going to be pretty gusty. And this, guys, is a real challenge to try to work the radios and follow the navigation and follow my notes and fly this helicopter. But that's what makes it so fun. So this whole trip is going to be about 70 nautical miles all the way down here to the hinterlands outside of the city to Dwight Airport, which is a neat-looking little airport, despite it being way out here in the middle of nowhere. The only thing that's not true to life is you'll see when we're coming in. I have to imagine it's not true to life. There's a giant radio mast right here at the end of the runway. So once we get in here, just since I'm not going to be flipping back to the map, once we get the airport in sight, I'll probably kind of swing out like this and then come in and land in this spot right here and then pull it over to a big grease stain they have right there, and we'll park in position number 8. That's the plan of attack. But it's a cool little airport out there. So not much to see from here to here. Lots to see until we get there. And as we get to more of the flyover country, where we're going to be flying very high and not seeing much stuff on the ground, I'll tell you a lot more about the history of Route 66. We're not going to have much time to talk about it on this trip, but we might get to some of it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so getting to the airspace here. Really, we could fly this, despite how crowded this looks, without hitting anyone's airspace if we weren't trying to follow Route 66. And that's going to be the problem. So in real life, we would be taking off below the shelf of the Class Bravo right here. You can see that starts at 3,000 feet. We're only at about 1,000, so if we got up to 2,500 and just flew out this way, we'd be totally fine. We completely avoid the Midway Class Charlie right here. We could just cruise right here, squeeze between Midways and that Class Delta right there, and then we'd be on our way. But we got to follow Route 66. So the only one we're going to have to pierce at the altitudes we're going to be flying at is this central core of the Charlie for Midway. But we're not going to contact Midway because it is Chicago Approach for O'Hare that handles all the transitioning traffic through this area. So we're going to get flight following from them. They may keep us on their frequency for the duration of it. Once we get completely free of all of their airspaces, which will be way out here, even though this airspace, this sector right here, this big block, starts at 3,600 feet. We won't be that high, so we'll technically be free of all their airspace. But once we get all the way out of this outer ring, I'm probably just going to cancel the flight following. And then we'll do some non-towered radio calls for these guys. And let me go ahead and write down the frequency for their CTAF while I'm sitting here, if they even have it. Okay, the Unicom, that's good. 122.8. I'm just going to write that on my iPad real quick. Okay, so we're cool with that. All right, so what we're going to do is call them up once we get in here and let them know exactly what we're doing. And I'm not real familiar with how radio calls work, particularly from the top of a building. I do know we have some real helicopter pilots on the channel, Bella 242, hint, hint. So let me know how you would actually go about doing this in real life. Again, we're not taking off in anyone's airspace. We're just letting these guys know what we want to do and where we plan on going. So I'm going to tell them that we're flying from A48 Tango Romeo, heading down to Dwight Field down there, and then we are going to pierce the Class Charlie for Midway, and I'm going to tell them we're going to fly at or below 1,800, which I'm sure they'll be fine with. They have been so far. But again, in real life, they probably wouldn't bring us over here. They wouldn't let us do this unless we needed it for some kind of special access or something. So that's what that's going to look like. So let's get this back over here. Call these guys up and see what's going on. I've already got it programmed in 119.0. That is for approach. Okay. Chicago Approach, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot, aircraft type 222 Bravo. We are taking off from 48 Tango Romeo, heading down to Dwight Field Delta Tango Golf. We will be transitioning the Class Charlie for Midway to the southwest. and would like to request flight following. Our planned altitude is 1,800 feet within the Chicago airspace.
Helicopter 0, Papa Foxtrot. Maintain VFR at or below 1,800 feet. Departure on 120.35 squawk 5757.
All right, so we'll just read that back to them. VFR at or below 1,800 feet, departure frequency 120.35, squawk 5757 for helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot.
Helicopter 0, Papa Foxtrot, read back correct.
Okay, read back correct. Very good. So let's go ahead and put that departure frequency in here just in case they hand us off. And again, they didn't last time. 120.35. And by the way, I switched to the 750 here because it's a heck of a lot easier to adjust it by pushing the buttons than it is twisting all those dials. Okay, so that's on standby. Now we got to get down here to this transponder, which is behind our throttles, so I set up a different camera for that. They have the old school transponder in here still. All right, our number is 5757. 345 7 5 4 5 6 7. And we're on altitude reporting mode. Very good. Okay, Karen, you ready? Ready to rock and roll? We haven't seen Chet's wife in a long time. I'm glad to see her again, though. Not really. It's been a while since I've been in a helicopter. Let's see if I can even get this thing up in the air. Okay, so what we're going to do here is come on out. We'll come around the Navy Pier, which is what you see right over here. Come up to this breakwater and kind of follow that past the pier, keeping a very close eye on my altimeter. And let's just check that barrow. That's pretty good. So we're at 1,000 feet right now. And we only got 800 feet of bandwidth here, so we're going to have to keep a very close eye on that as we're doing our maneuvering. Then we're going to get turned back towards the city, and I'm going to give you your aiming point for getting yourself oriented, because once you get into the city, you'll kind of lose track of the roads, and we'll take it from there. All right, so let's see how we do. Whoa, whoa. Made a little left anti-torpedo. That was beautiful. Yeah, I'm a little rusty, guys. Haven't had a lot of helicopter practice lately. Okay, so let's just get off the pad here and get out this way. Yeah, it's already gusting to 18 knots. Let's go ahead and get that gear up and quiet that thing down. So I'm just going to go ahead and start trimming now so I can stay ahead of that climb. Give it some more collective. Just making our way over to the breakwater. So despite that Ferris wheel being all filled in down there, I think Chicago actually looks pretty good for photogrammetry. Look at all these boats out here. Just right around here when we're closer.
Papa Foxtrot, radar contact. 2 north of Meigs Field at 1400 feet. Chicago altimeter 30.03.
3003, 0 Papa Foxtrot. Okay, once we get to the breakwater, we're going to turn right. And here we come on 1,800 feet already, so let's pitch that down. Man, I am really rusty in the old helicopters. That's fine, we're going to make this. I only took one test flight in here. So as we come around here, you'll see Meigs Field over along the coastline, which is no longer there. It's a big park now. And then you'll see Soldier Field, the big football stadium back behind that. And then right along the shoreline is the first thing we're going to start looking at and for to get ourselves lined up. Just trying to stay at 1,800 feet there. There's Soldier Field. There's Meigs Field over to the left. Okay, you see that little circular fountain that just came into view on the left side of our pillar there on the right? We're going to aim right for that. And then just north of that, which is behind our pillar right now, is the Art Institute of Chicago. We'll see that in just a second. If you follow that directly...
Helicopter 0 Papa Foxtrot, transition through the Chicago class Charlie airspace is approved. Maintain current altitude. Remain this frequency.
Transition through airspace approved. Maintain current altitude and frequency 0 Papa Foxtrot. Okay, right down there to the right, those white-topped buildings, that's the Art Institute. And you see that corridor kind of pointing to the building right in front of the bigger buildings? That's Adams Street, and that is where Route 66 starts. So if you get yourself lined up over that little fountain and pointed towards this big tramway ahead of us, stay just to the left of that, and you will be on course for taking our 45-degree left turn along Route 66 once it cuts over here.
Request IFR clearance to Kennedy Airport.
That white-topped, oval-shaped building over there to the right is the place where the Bulls and the Blackhawks play, the United Center. And then over the left side of that, directly ahead of us on this side of the train tracks, is where the University of Illinois at Chicago is. And they have a little Italy down there, too, right in the middle of campus, it looks like. Probably get some good eats. Okay, so now's the first time you really get a good sense of where Route 66 is, and this is going to be, it's right behind our center pillar right now. It's going to be cutting off at 45 degrees, so we'll aim towards that. And there it is. There is Route 66. So we'll just chase that this way a little bit. So just off the nose, not just off the nose, but on the left side of Route 66, you can see some baseball fields there in that opening. The road is cutting through the middle of Douglas Park, which when it was originally opened in 1871 was...
Altitudes at your discretion.
Altitude, my discretion, 0 Papa Foxtrot. When it was originally opened in 1871, it was named after Stephen A. Douglas, the senator. And then in 2020, they threw an extra S on the last part of it, so it's now Douglas, and named after Anna and Frederick Douglass. Stephen Douglas, according to what I was reading, was not an abolitionist, but he wasn't necessarily pro-slavery either. He never owned any, but he thought it should be a states' rights issue before we start hating on him too much. See, that photogrammetry looks good. We're going to have a huge train yard coming up ahead here, which is going to look real nice. Some big open pit mines. The weather's very nice, despite being a little bit windy. So right now we got a quartering headwind of about 10 knots. Not too bad. Lots and lots of suburbia out here. Can you even call this suburbia? After we take a look at this train yard, which looks amazing, off to the left we are going to see the Hawthorne Race Course. If we can look through Karen's head. Karen, who hates both slavery and expensive wine, apparently. But that race course opened in 1890, and we can't quite see it yet. It's behind our center pillar. Here it's coming into view. See it down there on the left, the big green spot? Opened in 1890, which makes it the oldest continuously operating family-owned racetrack in North America. I don't know anything about horse racing, so I don't know if that place is a big deal or not. Look at this train yard down here. Lots of rust, lots of filth, lots of train cars, lots of containers. Love it. Just love all of it. So what's going to happen is right up here, the road is going to split off this way, then we'll catch up to it again, and I'll show you how we'll find it, because there's going to be a huge pit mine that we're going to see once we get over there. And we'll just keep following it over. So you can just barely see a little bit of it right over here. We're kind of going to fly parallel to it for a while, and then we're going to cross over it. That's a pretty important waterway. And we're going to see it a lot better here in a few minutes. But it's called the Chicago Sanitary and Ship Canal. And that opened in 1900 as a more navigable alternative to the Des Plaines River, which is actually pronounced around here as Des Plaines. In French, you would say Des Plaines, just like you leave the S off of Illinois when you say it properly. But the Des Plaines River, which runs right next to it, is a little bit shallow, a little bit rough. So they opened that thing up, making it the only way to get down to the Mississippi from the Great Lakes Waterway. But another very important reason for building that thing is that it reversed the flow of the Chicago River so that all the sewage, which the residents were dumping into it, wouldn't flow out into Lake Michigan, which is where they were and still are getting their drinking water from. So there's the Des Plaines on the right, and you can see the ship canal is the much wider and straighter one over to the left there. You can see we got some sunken bridges, which is the only bummer of the photogrammetry out here. In fact, most of them are going to, if they're elevated at all, like that one right in front of us, they're going to look like they got water on them, which is too bad. But you know what I'm not seeing? Not a single blob tree. I wonder if Asobo has been working on that. All right, so here is Route 66 running this way, and then it's going to cut up here. So these are train tracks. Don't follow those. Just go to the right of this big pit mine, which looks awesome also. We might have to look at all these containers down here. Oh, love it. I love this stuff. Look at this. They're everywhere. Junk and containers as far as the eye can see. I might hop outside the helicopter. I set up a little camera that's going to give us a shot back over the nose so that we can look down in here if we can't see it over the top of the nose. Because the water looks pretty cool down in that thing. Performance is pretty good. I'm getting a little bit of just like millisecond stopping. Really no stuttering. Look at all that stuff down there. It looks just great. Karen, you like filth? Of course you don't. Look at this pit mine. This water down here looks so cool. You can see all the swirls of muck floating around in there. I haven't seen anything about them fixing the blob trees. Usually in an area like this, they would be everywhere. So let me know if I just missed something. Alright. I don't think that's for us. Sounds like someone's got an open mic.
United 1239er, ready to copy IFR clearance.
Once we get up here, we're going to see in the transition from the photogrammetry to the regular stuff, which you can kind of see how the color changes. There's like 2 or 3 squares that are just really blurry. Not sure what's going on with that. But after that, it'll be smooth sailing, even though it won't be photogrammetry buildings. It'll be default stuff.
Departure on 133.65, squawking 2546, United 1239.
The entire length of Route 66 is about 2,500 miles, and we're covering about 70 of it today. So I'm not sure how long this series is going to stretch out, but it'll be some great filler. If we don't have anything else to fly, I'm going to have some more flight lesson type stuff coming up. I'll probably get my CFI Brian back in here with us. Finally getting a little bit better at the landings, and I'm also going to start working on my category ratings with Pilot Edge. So I'll show you guys how that's going too for anyone that's interested in it. Look at those golf courses down there. Boy, this is just such a good looking area with the exception of these final squares right up here. Yeah, we're getting a little bit of popping now too. Man, it was so nice to just come back in here and research a flight. It had been a couple months, guys. It was like food for my soul to get back into it. As you can imagine, my brain has been mostly occupied with memorizing information for my PPL. Alright, so here come the weird tiles. So we got like this super bright light colored one, and then just like this really blurry one, and it's just too bad that it just happens to be right here on Route 66. So I think this is Interstate 55 that it's kind of overlapping right now. And then up north a little bit, up ahead, or south a little bit, it's going to break off. Look at this. It's just changing colors. And I've got my cache set. I flew over here once or twice already, so it should already be pre-cached. It just does this every time I fly out here. Not sure why. So one of the planes I recently got, which I cannot wait to fly, we can't do any kind of radio communication with it because the way the radios work, they're way back behind the pilot. They don't even have a standby channel. They don't have a transponder, but I got the Avro Lancaster, which will be fun to fly that over some of the farmland and stuff out there. Maybe we can see if we can find a big grass strip to land it in. That'd be pretty neat if we can. Okay, so we're going to fly. You know, I might come off it. Obviously, you can see where the road's going here. I'm going to come off this way just a little bit so you can see this big thing over here. When I came by the first time, it's a giant circular building right here. I thought, man, that looks an awful lot like a particle accelerator. And it turns out that's exactly what it is. That is the Argonne National Laboratory, which played a major role in the development. Major role in the development of the atom bomb back in the Manhattan Project days. And then after the war, it was designated the first national laboratory in the United States on July 1st, 1946. And I believe today it's used for mostly peaceful purposes. At least that's what they're telling us. Well, the ground looks really light out here, doesn't it? Maybe they're having a drought. All right, so there's the big circular building, which looks pretty, even though it's default, it looks pretty much like that in real life, too. So that's pretty close. Okay, and in just a little bit, we're going to be taking another turn to the left, and I need to try to track where that's happening. I think it's going to happen at this little spaghetti junction up here. I think they said that they were doing some of Enrico Fermi's work out there way back in the day. Well, that's kind of interesting. It looks like some of those cars even have elevation, which is rare for... not those. Some of them look like they had some relief, which... oh, there's a freeze. Which is kind of rare for these non-photogrammetry areas. So what's going to happen here is it's going to come this way. We're going to follow this road down there towards the river. But not cross it yet.
Delta 1371 contact Chicago Center on 124.725.
I guess they're just going to let us stay on this frequency.
Switching
Proceed to Chicago Center on 124.725, Delta 1371.
I'm going to go ahead and cancel the flight following because we are completely clear of everybody's airspace at this point. Chicago approach, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot, request cancellation of flight following.
Helicopter 0 Papa Foxtrot, roger. Radar services terminated. Squawk VFR. Frequency change approved.
Squawk VFR, frequency change approved, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot. All right, I'm just looking over here at little nav map. Okay, so that's not Route 66 there. It's not the big highway. It's this other road that's coming off and squiggling through here. So we can still see it VFR. No problem. And now here comes an incredible feat of acrobatics, trying to fly straight and change that VFR frequency, or VFR squawk code. Let's see if I can do it. I'm just judging by the shadows how I'm doing. 1, 2. Oh, this is going to be fun when I climb back up there. 0, 0.
Chicago approach, American 1112.
I pulled it off. All right. We need to come back this way a little bit. So just remember, it's the squiggly road.
American 1112, Chicago approach, roger. American 1112, Chicago approach, clear direct MRFF.
And we'll go ahead and put this on the guard frequency of 121.5, which will just be a little bit quieter. There we go. Right up here is, you know what, we would be flying through their airspace. So what I'm going to do is come way over here to get out of their airspace. We're not quite there yet, because if we were still getting flight following, they would have covered that for us. So we'll just take a look at the Ship Canal and the Des Plaines River over here and stay clear of Lewis University Airport. At least their airspace. There is so much industry along here, and in real life on the satellite map you can see that there's all kinds of barges moving up and down here, but these bridges, most of them that I was looking at on the satellite map, are pretty low. I don't think you get anything too big up and down there. So I'm guessing they're just pushing barges all over the place around here. And we're going to see a really nice looking dam up here in a little bit. It's got some nice water flowing over it. Well, not really flowing. So that appears to be a coal-burning power plant. We're going to see a big nuke plant once we get outside of the suburbs here, down south of Joliet. And I'm guessing that place probably pumps a lot of power up to Chicago, but I read that the nuclear place that we're going to see in a little bit provides most of it. And boy, I bet they're moving a lot of coal on those barges. Since I can't see where the Delta airspace is on my map, I don't know if we're actually out of it, but we're going to assume that we are. So one interesting thing about the old Lewis University Airport is that it was the original base of operations for the Wings of Hope Foundation, which you may have heard of. They provide free medical flights for folks in 48 different countries today, earning them not 1 but 2 nominations for the Nobel Peace Prize. I read that in 2019 alone they helped out 73,000 people across the globe. Way to go, guys. And I don't know where their main base of operations is today. I think the guys that started it were originally from St. Louis, and they may be down there now. They said that within a 900-mile radius of wherever they're operating from, they still do local free medical transport for folks. So it looks like they've got like a little auxiliary canal going through there, doesn't it? Unless those are, no, that's a canal. They got bridges over it. I thought it might be train tracks. And there's the airport. Oh yeah, we're still in their airspace. We're way too close. If we were another 500 feet higher, we'd probably be good out of it, over the top of it. So we'll just come back over this way. And get back on track to follow our road here, which I think is this, running right here. We'll see once we get a little bit closer. I'm looking over a little nav map. Okay, I like 2,500 feet, so I'm going to trim it out for right here. Up ahead on the left side of the river, we're going to be coming across the town of Joliet, where we'll follow Route 66 across the Des Plaines River as it crosses from right to left. Fans of the series Prison Break would probably recognize at least one landmark from down there. The old Joliet prison is where that was filmed. My wife and I watched every episode of that. I think that was back in the pre-COVID days. At least they filmed the outside shots there. But they closed it down in 2002, and now it's a museum for folks like us who want to milk every drop of history out of Route 66, or Route 66 if you prefer. I know some people say Route 66. Where I used to live in New England, they always called it Route everything. And there's also a Harrah's Casino down there on the river if you want to throw a little bit more money away while you're passing through. Okay, here it comes right up in front of us, right off the nose up there. And the prison is up on this side of town. Doesn't look like it does in real life, though. So the road crosses right over that sunken bridge right there, and then just kind of comes right down through here, wiggles around a little bit, and then that's it, heading straight off in that direction. And we got a couple really big landmarks coming up here pretty shortly. I'm going to come over here and show you this dam. It's called the Brandon Road Lock and Dam. They're going to have a lock over on this side of it, and then here's the dam right here. It was built in the 1920s as they were carving out all the rest of this stuff. So the road's going to cut right underneath that little clover turn there and then shoot out that way. But I want to show you the other side of this dam because it kind of looks like there's water flowing over it, which is pretty neat. You know, I think it's looking so shockingly light colored out here as far as the grass, because the last time I flew this, it was closer to sunset, so everything looked a little bit darker. And I do have the dynamic FPS turned on, which is why everything looks so barren out there ahead. I had to keep it that way or else we would have had to turn it down too much in Chicago. Look at that dam. See how it looks like there's water flowing over it? Pretty cool, isn't it? And then there's the locks over there. Another big pit mine. Lovely. Okay, over there to the left is the Chicagoland Speedway, which probably built itself a little bit too far outside of the city. They opened that in 2001, but they stopped all big races just 18 years later. And then over to the right, and it actually looks quite a bit like that, despite looking so flat. The only difference that isn't shown here, and there wasn't an add-on for this, they got their grandstand, which would come up in there a little bit, and then a big tower popping up right here. There was an add-on available for that, but it was one of those that just tried to convert the Google data to photogrammetry. It didn't look all that great, I didn't think. But they did have the tower popping up, but it was all geometric and jagged looking. And then over here is the Route 66 Speedway. Raceway, I'm sorry. This is the Route 66 Raceway, which opened just a couple years earlier than this place, but I think it met the same fate. Just couldn't get enough people out here. But they got a big drag strip out here. This was a $20 million drag strip, and their grandstand section here is 4 stories tall. And they got their little dirt track out there, so I'm sure a few people went bankrupt on that deal. And then over, can we see it? Well, it's kind of hard to see it, but over here is something called the Autobahn Country Club, which was a first-of-its-kind automobile members-only country club. And it seems like they're doing all right. I think their initiation dues were $50,000 and then $6,000 a year or so. So if you're into that kind of thing, you can still come out here and drive around your expensive car. Or a cheap one. But shoot, $50,000 to get in, that's probably a lot cheaper than owning a plane, even a cheaper one. All right, here we go. Off into the wild brown and olive drab yonder. All right, so this is Route 66 cutting off this way, so we're going to follow it over there and head off in that direction. So while we have a few minutes to give you just a little bit of the backstory of Route 66, it became official on November 11th of 1926, stretching from here all the way to Santa Monica, California, which, as I mentioned, is about 2,500 miles away. And it wasn't like someone had to plot out a bunch of open land that they would have to clear and pave to make the thing. They just strung together a whole bunch of existing roads. They did have to pave a few little areas, but it was mostly existing roads, making it one of the very first numbered roads in the fledgling U.S. highway system. And it got quite a bit of use in those early years, not by tourists, which would come later, but people heading west looking for work and anything that wasn't buried in dust during the Depression. I'm going to go ahead and program in our CTAF/Unicom frequency for Dwight while we're sitting here. Just so that's ready to go, 122.8. Alright. Oop. 2.8. Enter. Okay, that'll be ready to go for us once we get close to the airport. Route 66 enjoyed about 30 years of glory and widespread use until they finally got to work on the U.S. interstate system in the 1950s. A good portion of which was built directly next to old little Route 66, cutting off all the little hotels and gas stations and diners that were making their money off the travelers. And it was officially decommissioned in 1985. But if you still wanted to travel the route by car today, and I certainly do, you could see almost all of the original path, about 85% of it's still intact, though a lot of it's now major interstates. And if I could ever find a way to take a trip like that, the coolest thing for me would be driving through all the little towns that popped up because of Route 66. Like little ones that have no other reason for being there because they weren't near anything else. But I bet you could find that a lot of places like that are just frozen in time. And some cheap meth at those little motels. Now here's something that's pretty interesting. Look at this area over here. If you've flown around enough in the sim, you probably recognize that pattern of buildings. I thought it looked a lot like, kind of like when I saw that particle accelerator, an ammunition depot. But when I was looking at it on the maps, all it showed is this thing, which is a big landfill. It didn't say anything about this at all. So I started looking around, and I put the name of this landfill in there and said, what is that structure with all the bunkers just north of that landfill? And it turns out that that is the Joliet, the former site of the Joliet Army Ammunition Plant, which is a relic of World War II. And it was the largest munitions factory in the world at the time, employing over 10,000 workers. And I imagine it was originally a lot bigger than what we're seeing down here. And it turns out the reason they built it way out here is that making explosives is indeed a risky business. And it was a good thing they did put it out here. At 2:40 a.m. on June 5th, 1942, the place exploded. One of the assembly lines blew up, killing 52 workers and blowing out windows up to 60 miles away. So those aren't buildings in real life, they're dirt-covered bunkers, and it's all closed off now. Probably going to become eventually part of that landfill. So a lot of history down there. Too bad it's just rotting away now. The biggest munitions plant in the world. What do you think, that was a little shot in the arm for the local economy, or what? Way out here? I mean, you have to imagine 80 years ago, there probably wasn't any of the sprawl or anything. They didn't have the Autobahn Country Club. None of it. You know, I think I like it, so I would suggest putting it at about 5:30 to 7:30 for the time of day. I just think it looked a lot better with the sun a little bit lower in the skies. The fields look better because you could see some of the rows and everything. It just looks a little bit too light, in my opinion, out here like it is right now. All right, I think we got another turn coming up here. Yes, indeed, we do. So we're about to cruise over the town of Wilmington right down here on our right, crossing back over the river. And then we're going to head about 15 miles to the southwest to our destination of Dwight Airport. And this place from the air anyway just looks like the quintessential American small town to me. I bet its location on Route 66 is a big part of why it's out here. And if you're cruising through by road, you can stop by the historic Eagle Hotel and grab some selfies with the Gemini Giant, who is one of those iconic Route 66 Muffler Man statues. This one's got a big space helmet on. Well, it's a welding helmet, but he's supposed to look like a space guy, which is so cool. And his location is right down here somewhere in this park. He used to be, I think, downtown, but they put him right by this park right now. That's where he is, and he's standing on a big Route 66 sign. Okay, not real tough to see where Route 66 goes from here because it's the only major road coming out this way. We're just going to keep following it down. Let's hop outside this thing real quick, see how she's looking. Not great from that angle. Man, I preset a camera on the outside looking at it from the front, but I guess it reset when I hopped outside of it. Oh, there's a big radio antenna coming over down there. Let's get away from that. And then it gets all kind of swampy and marshy out here. So this town that's going to be mostly on our right, in other words, the western side of Route 66, is another beautiful little small town with a more modern twist. It got its start in the 1860s as a mining boom town. It's called Braidwood. But they weren't mining for gold or silver out here. They were digging out coal. Chicago burned so much of it, the miners started flocking out here to get in on the action, but the problem was a lot more coal was needed in the winter than the summer, so they were plagued with cyclical unemployment problems, creating quite a bit of strife within the community. And then further out that way, probably right around over here, this town's called Coal City. And I thought maybe this huge area out here, because some of the edges are very squared off, might have been part of where they were like strip mining the coal, but all of the coal mines were underground out here. And if you look on the little nav map, you can see all the sites where they were. Some of them are underwater, but I don't think they had any open mines over here. I think this is all part of the nuclear power plant, which is this place right here. So this is the one that's sending all their juice up to Chicago. And you may notice there's no cooling towers. There's none in real life either. Maybe they're just dumping the water right into that huge reservoir there. And as we fly by, I'm going to come around the eastern side of it here so you can look down there. You'll see the two circles where the two reactors are. And they're slightly elevated, but not as high as they would be in real life. But they got all the little power line towers and everything, which is great. Oh man, last time I was out here, there was one solitary boat. There he is, still scooting around out here. Sailboat, got the whole thing to himself. I bet the water's pretty warm in that thing if they're pumping all the the heated water out there. Yeah, last time he was over here, he made it all the way over there. Enjoy it. Wonder if they have any three-eyed fish in there. Alright, so once that pillar's out of the way, I'll show you where the cooling towers are, or the reactor containment areas are. This actually looks completely different than it did last time. Alright, there'd be one right here and one right here. You can kind of see the circular bottoms of them. I wonder if it redraws those every time. That's interesting. Man, this is some flat area. I thought Jacksonville was flat. This is just flat. Not a lump or bump anywhere. Including some flat trees down there to our right. And our last little town is dead ahead of us. That is the town of Gardner. Population 1,300. It's so tiny, I really couldn't find much info on it, but they do have a historic 2-cell jail down there. And I couldn't get the backstory on that either, but if you're going to be a town on Route 66, you better have something for the tourists to take a picture of. So they got it, their 2-cell jail. And I'm guessing that probably made its way onto the map for the coal miners out here too. They don't even have any schools down there. They got an elementary school and a high school here in Braidwood. But nothing out in Gardner. And this will be the home stretch before we come to the airport. But you see how they got these like little squiggly lakes and stuff all around here? I'm kind of wondering if before they built up all this agriculture, if that's what all the landscape looked like out here. Because if that was man-made, I don't know why they'd be doing that. Unless it was just like a fill dumping area. I bet that's what it is. I bet it's a fill dumping area from when they were digging out that reservoir for the power plant. Because that would be strange just to have those sitting there looking like that. They look like little miniature Finger Lakes, don't they? Holy smokes, this is a whole lot of nothing. And I guess we should probably get used to that. Route 66 does not go through the center of town here. They're probably complaining about all those hot rodders driving right through the main drag, but it comes out like this, goes around the outskirts, and then hooks back up again over here. These fields look a little bit better. They're not so light. It still looked a lot better when the sun was lower in the sky, though. Now, that's what I would do if I could do it all over again. Sometimes I think it'd be really, really nice to live in a little town like this, but then I think... So I was just looking at like what grocery stores and amenities they have out here. Basically just a Dollar General, not even a Walmart. And then of course like an auto parts supplier. That's it. So you're going to be driving a little bit if you need to go to a mall or go to the movies or go to any kind of a decent restaurant. But I bet it's pretty chill out here. What do you think? And it's kind of cool if we were at a higher altitude, you'd be able to see how when they originally laid out all this land, it is just a patchwork grid of roads. You can kind of tell from here, cutting between all this farmland. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch onto the frequency for the airport, and we'll make our first call to those guys, see if anyone's listening. I highly doubt it. Not way out here. I don't see any other planes in the area on little nav map, and it would show them. Dwight traffic, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot, 7 miles northeast at 2,100. Inbound for straight in runway 27. We'll be crossing over the approach threshold of 27 and landing next to the hangars. Dwight traffic. Officially, I should have made that call at 10 miles out, but I got a little bit carried away looking at that tiny little town back there. So just keeping an eye on the little nav map down there because it's going to be tough to see this airport before we make the turn. Look at that. Talk about desolation. Jeez. We better get used to it. Can we see the airport yet? Not really. Dwight traffic, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot, 3 miles northeast at 2,100. Inbound for straight in runway 27. We'll be crossing over the approach threshold of 27 and landing next to the hangars. Dwight traffic. Alright, I just caught a glimpse of the airport, so we'll come forward just a little bit more and then cruise over there and start our descent. And slowing ourselves down a bit. You see that one little rectangle sticking out over there? That's going to be it. Let's see if I can land this thing. So again, I'm not going to come straight in. This is a skinny runway too. It's a little over 2,000 feet long, and then the grass strip on the other side I think is 1,999 feet. If you were bringing a plane in here, you need to take advantage of the winds, which are now at 20 knots, blowing almost directly from the south. They're at 190. So we'll start coming down. I'll bring that nose up some. And we'll just come around this end of the threshold of the runway. And you'll see that tower sticking up I was telling you about in a minute, which has got to be in the wrong spot. Dwight traffic, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot on final for runway 27. We'll be crossing over the approach threshold of 27 from the south, landing next to the hangars. Dwight traffic. I still can't see the tower yet. Oh yeah, I can barely start to see it now. So we'll have the wind blowing from behind us as we start facing the airport. I'm actually kind of having to lean into it, as you can see here, to keep us somewhat on course. So I'm giving it left cyclic, right anti-torque pedal. There's that tower. You see that? Talk about an obstacle. Look how skinny that runway is. Man, I can't even imagine trying to bring a plane on it. I think it's 21 feet wide. Alright, I'm going to come way out here and then swing around so I don't have to get anywhere near that tower. And let's get our gears down. Whoa. Okay, come on, Nick. You got this. You got it. Oh, boy. Karen, I know you're probably going to be complaining about this landing. I don't want to hear it. I already know what you're going to say. Oh. All right, come on. We got this. Yeah, that wind's blowing us pretty good. Oh. There we go. Just get it under control. Just get a nice hover going there. Can I do it? Can I do it? I think we're going to make it. There we go. A little bit wobbly coming in, but we made it. Luckily we got wheels on this thing, so we don't have to worry about dragging the skids around. Alright, and just for fun, I'm going to go park it over there on that little oil slick spot, because it just looks like a great spot to park a helicopter. Dwight traffic, helicopter 200 Papa Foxtrot, clear of runway 27, Dwight traffic. Alright, so hang out for 1 second. We'll take a closer look at little nav map, some of the things we saw from the air, so you can see a little bit better what they look like in real life. There's our oil slick. And let me see if I can remember how to shut this thing down. It's been a while. So I think in this one you start to turn everything off before you bring the throttles back. So just for fun, let's go ahead and do that. See if I can get her shut down. Okay, so believe it or not, I think you turn the generators and everything else off. I don't know where the rotor brake is on this thing, by the way. I was looking for it everywhere. Those off. We'll go ahead and turn the seatbelt and no smoking sign off. And we might leave the fuel on for a minute. We'll leave the hydraulics on. Let's just turn the throttle off. Stop that. Okay, that should do it. And we'll pull our parking brake. Jeez, you get a caution for everything. I guess it's better than not knowing. All right. So let's take a look at our little journey here. All right, so the first thing that we did was come out here, just again as a little reminder, fly out to the breakwater, just kind of circle it back around. As soon as you get turned back towards the city, here's that fountain that I was aiming at. And if you fly right over the top of that and look down towards the right, you'll see this big open field right here. Then you'll see this big white top of the Art Institute. And if you follow that little corridor right there, it shoots through Fullerton Hall, which I think is a library now. Yeah, a library. And there's Adams Street. And you can see on the little nav map, there's even a little sign, Begin Route 66, right there. That's where it starts. And if you feel like cruising down here, again, this is where Meigs Field is. And then you got Soldier Field over there. You got their aquarium, Natural History Museum, their little observatory, which you probably can't see anything considering the lights from the city. Well, this is interesting. So in the sim, it looked a lot like all of this was tramways here. Obviously, they got a little tramway going through the middle, but this is not. This is Interstate 290, so it is an interstate. It just looked like most of it was a tramway. And then if you look off to the right here, you'll see the United Center, which looks great. You can even see that on the top of it, which is really cool. And then here is the campus for the University of Illinois at Chicago. And if we zoom out a little bit, look, there's Little Italy right in the middle of it, and this is University Village. So I don't know if this whole square here is part of the university. These kind of look like university-type buildings. No, that's a church over there. So maybe it's just this section right here, but it's close to Little Italy. Okay, so once you see the United Center, start looking for this road that comes off at a 45-degree angle. You won't miss it, but if you've gone past the United Center, you've gone too far. So look for that, follow that this way, and then look off in the distance for the train yard, and then just kind of fly right towards it. You'll see this road cutting through here. They got some industrial stuff built up along the sides of it. Here's where Douglas with an extra S now park is. You will see these little baseball fields over here. It's kind of tough to see this, though, in the sim. There was lots and lots of trees over that. But aim for the train yard over here. If you look down to your left, you'll see the Hawthorne Race Course. This helicopter doesn't sound like it's slowing down. That's fine. We'll cut the fuel here when we're done. And then this is the first spot you might get lost. So with this one, when you hit this big green area, which you won't miss because you'll see houses, 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 then all of a sudden green area, that's where it's going to come off this way. You'll really lose the road as it comes between here. So just start looking for the two rivers here, the Ship Canal and then the Des Plaines River. And then the big, huge open pit mine that looks so awesome. Just remember, Route 66 is going to run just to the north of that, the McCook Quarry. And this thing looks so awesome. I forgot to hop out there and take a look down the water, but it looks really, really cool. If you set the sun too low, this whole thing will be a shadow because the sides are really high on it. And then there's Midway, and then we got to that. Okay, so here's the National Laboratory, and there's their big circular thing, which is kind of interesting. Two different images there. They must have been working on the roof. I'm guessing that was the particle accelerator, because unless it's a giant underground one, that kind of looks like one, doesn't it? And then we come over here, and we get to where we're about to cross through the airspace for Lewis Unit. Oh, yeah, that was definitely within their airspace, because that would be about 4-mile radius, and this is 5 miles right here, so we definitely were there. And we were a little bit low. We would have cut through it, so I canceled the flight following a little bit too soon. And there's Joliet Prison right there. And there's the thing, if you watched Prison Break, you'd probably recognize their little castle-looking building, which was not modeled in the sim, unfortunately, because it was default buildings. But we could see this outer wall here. But that's the prison there. And then here's where 66 crosses over the river, which has a really neat-looking bridge. Unfortunately, it's probably a drawbridge even, it looks like. That was completely underwater. Once you get over Joliet, just look off in the distance. We'll cross back over Interstate 80, and it'll just be this road shooting straight out of town. And then you'll see the Chicagoland Speedway over to the left. There's where their big tower is that's in the middle of the speedway, although I don't see a shadow for that, so they may have pulled that down. Yeah, you can tell that place is desolate. Yep. That's just too bad. I can't imagine how much money they sank into that. But there's where the tower would be, unless that's it right there. Now that's got to be it. Yeah, that's probably the tower because you can see it coming off of there. They still got their monster insignia down there. And the big grandstand. Wow. Gosh, that's just too bad. And then here's the racetrack, raceway. Oh, and here's the Autobahn. Look at this place, the country club. 50 grand, you can get in there. So they got like a little kart track, it looks like. That's a big course. I wonder how long that is. I wonder if they have a bar in there. Okay, and then we come down here to the ammunition plant. Check this out. So this is what it looks like in real life. You can see they are all turf-covered bunkers. They're not little buildings. And then this whole section of it here is now just a huge landfill. 52 people were killed when that blew up. So let's just see how big a 60-mile radius is from there, if that's how far windows are getting blown out. That's going to be far. So there's 30, 40, 50, 60. Holy cow. So that would have been up here in Chicago, windows were getting blown out. Yikes. That is a big explosion. I'm surprised only 50 people were killed. 52 people. Man, oh man. And here's where you can find the Gemini Giant. If you want to come through this little town here, which you're going to have to. Here's Route 66 coming across this way. And this little tiny park down here, I think the Gemini Giant is now standing right on the corner. And they also have the historic Eagle Hotel, which looks kind of dumpy now. I think they made a museum out of it, but for a while they turned it into apartments or something. Might have even been closed for a while. The pictures I saw of it online, it looked pretty run down. But if it's a museum, they probably cleaned it up. So here's the Braidwood Power Plant, and then there's where the two reactor containment units are. No cooling towers. Are there any actual boats out there? No, I'm not seeing any. Well, one little guy running his pontoon boat out there. So if we can see, let's see if we can get close. I bet, look at, okay, so here's some of the mines. Look at all these mines they used to have out here. And most of them really are up towards closer to town. I'm just looking to see if we can spot any others pockmarked out here. There's another one right there. Another one right there. And these were all underground. And I think they had a big flood at one of these that killed like 70 or 80 people at some point. Anyway, there's mines all over the place out here, all throughout town. And then there's Coal City. And then we came down here to Gardner, our last little small town, which has nothing. And there's the Gardner 2-cell jail, if you want to get your picture. Right there. And it's just a little standalone building. Route 66 diners, or dinars, for all you guys investing in the Iraqi dinars. Okay, and then we came on into our airport. Beautiful. So here's what I'm thinking for the next leg. Obviously, we have got a lot of open space here. So I'm going to see, I mean, we got about probably a 30-mile haul to there, and I don't even know which way Route 66 goes from here. I think it kind of stretches all the way down to the southern tip of Illinois. So I think it's probably just going to kind of cruise along this road through here, so we'll see. Maybe we'll take something that flies a little higher and faster if we got a lot of ground to cover without much to talk about, but we'll figure it out. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Again, look for the flight plan link in there. The bookmark link will be in there, and also the link to our Discord server if you want to hop on there and enjoy a great community. Can't wait to see you guys in the skies for our next trip. Later.